Billionaire tech CEO Michael Hayes gripped his 18-month-old son David tighter as the child's screams pierced through the first-class cabin at 35,000 feet. For 4 excruciating hours, every passenger on Flight 847 had endured the relentless wailing that no amount of Michael's $12 billion fortune could silence. He had tried everything: bottles, diaper changes, walking the aisles until his legs ached, even playing white noise at volumes that made other passengers glare with undisguised hostility. The elderly businessman in 2A was checking his Rolex every 30 seconds, muttering loud enough for everyone to hear, "This is exactly why children don't belong in first class." The socialite in 3B was typing furiously on her phone, probably posting about inconsiderate parents who ruin flights for everyone else. Even the flight attendant's professional smiles had cracked under the pressure of 4 straight hours of chaos. Michael's designer shirt was soaked with sweat, his perfectly styled hair disheveled from running frustrated hands through it repeatedly. This man who commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals felt utterly defeated by his own child. David's face was red and blotchy, his tiny fists clenched in what looked like genuine agony, and nothing Michael did seemed to provide even a moment's relief. That's when something absolutely unthinkable happened. From the cramped economy section, a young black girl appeared, her clothes clean but clearly secondhand, her sneakers held together with careful repairs. Without asking permission, without introducing herself, she approached Michael's seat with a confidence that seemed impossible given the hostile atmosphere surrounding them. "Sir," she said quietly, her voice somehow cutting through David's desperate cries, "I know this might seem strange, but I believe I can help your son. Welcome back to Tales Cleave, where real stories inspire real change. If you're new here, I'm your host, and this is where we dive deep into stories that don't just entertain but transform the way you see the world. To my amazing subscribers who've been on this journey with me, thank you for being part of this incredible community. Your support, your comments, your shares, they mean everything. You're not just viewers, you're family." And before we dive into today's remarkable story, I want to take a moment for a quick prayer for all of you watching. Father, I pray for everyone who has clicked on this video today. I pray that you bless their hearts with peace, their minds with wisdom, and their lives with unexpected opportunities. May they find strength in difficult moments, courage to help others, and the ability to see potential in every person they meet. Cover them with your protection, surround them with love, and guide their steps toward purpose and joy. Amen. Now, if today's story moves you, if it changes how you see the people around you, please hit that like button. It truly helps more people discover these life-changing stories. And if you believe in the power of unexpected connections, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. This story begins 35,000 feet in the air, in the first-class cabin of Flight 847 from New York to London. But it's not about luxury or privilege. It's about a moment when everything a powerful man thought he knew about the world came crashing down, thanks to an 18-month-old baby and a teenage girl who wasn't supposed to be able to help. Michael Hayes adjusted his tie for the 10th time in the past hour, his usually immaculate appearance now wrinkled and disheveled. At 34 years old, he was the youngest billionaire in the tech industry, CEO of Hayes Innovation, a company specializing in artificial intelligence and robotics worth over $12 billion. Michael was accustomed to control. Every detail of his life was managed by assistants, scheduled by coordinators, and executed with precision. Board meetings, merger negotiations, product launches. He handled them all with the calm confidence of someone who had never met a problem money couldn't solve. But right now, as he held his 18-month-old son David against his chest, Michael Hayes felt more helpless than he had ever felt in his entire life. David's cries echoed through the first-class cabin with an intensity that seemed impossible for such a small human being. These weren't just normal baby cries. These were wails of desperation, pain, and distress that had been going on for 4 straight hours. "Please, buddy," Michael whispered, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "Daddy doesn't know what you need." The other first-class passengers had long since abandoned any pretense of politeness. Harold Morrison, a prominent investment banker in seat 2A, was making increasingly dramatic sighs and checking his Rolex every few minutes. "This is exactly why children shouldn't be allowed in first class," Morrison muttered to his wife, loud enough for Michael to hear. "Some people have no consideration for others." In seat 3B, Victoria Sterling, a socialite known for her charity galas and society connections, was typing aggressively on her phone, probably complaining to her friends about the inconsiderate parents ruining her flight. "If you can't control your child," she said to her assistant, "you shouldn't bring them on a plane. This is intolerable." Michael felt his face burning with embarrassment and frustration. These were people from his own world, wealthy, influential individuals who should understand that sometimes circumstances beyond your control create impossible situations. But their judgment stung particularly deep because Michael was beginning to doubt himself as a father. He could negotiate billion-dollar deals, lead teams of hundreds of employees, and make decisions that affected thousands of jobs. Yet he couldn't figure out how to comfort his own son. The flight attendants had tried to help, of course. Sarah, the lead attendant, had suggested everything from white noise apps to special holding positions. "Sometimes babies just need to cry it out, Mr. Hayes," she had said diplomatically, though Michael could see the strain in her professional smile. "It might help if you tried walking him up and down the aisle again." Michael had tried walking. He had tried feeding David the bottle prepared by his regular nanny. He had tried changing his diaper in the cramped airplane bathroom, a claustrophobic experience that left him sweating and flustered while David's cries only grew louder. He had tried playing classical music on his noise-canceling headphones, pressing them gently against David's ears. He had tried bouncing him, rocking him, and even attempting to sing lullabies he barely remembered from his own childhood. Nothing worked. David's face was red and blotchy from crying, his tiny fists clenched in what looked like genuine distress. Every wail seemed to be expressing not just discomfort, but a deep need that Michael couldn't understand how to meet. Michael's mind raced beyond the immediate crisis. He had 5 crucial days of merger negotiations waiting for him in London, meetings that could determine the future of his company's expansion into European markets. How could he bring a screaming baby into boardrooms filled with potential investors and partners? His ex-wife Amanda had been supposed to take David for the week, but she had canceled last minute for a spa retreat in Monaco. "I need this time for my mental health, Michael," she had said during their phone call. "Besides, you're the one who wanted custody. Figure it out." The nanny who usually helped with David had called in sick with food poisoning just hours before the flight. With no time to find a replacement and no way to postpone the London meetings, Michael had found himself boarding this plane alone with David and a diaper bag, trying to convince himself that how hard could it really be to manage a baby for 5 days? He was getting his answer to that question in the most humbling way possible. As David's cries reached a new pitch of desperation, Michael closed his eyes and tried to think. There had to be something he was missing. Some technique, some method, some solution that his wealth and resources could provide. But for the first time in his adult life, Michael Hayes was facing a problem that couldn't be solved with money, influence, or business acumen. His son needed something that Michael simply didn't know how to give him. 3 rows behind in economy class, 19-year-old Mirabelle Johnson shifted in her cramped seat, her heart clenching with recognition every time David's cries echoed through the cabin. She had been trying to focus on her conference notes, but the specific pitch and rhythm of those cries triggered something deep in her memory. Mirabelle knew that sound. She had heard it countless times during her years in foster care, in homeless shelters, and in the community centers where she had volunteered. But more than that, she knew what it meant. That wasn't just a fussy baby crying. That was a child in genuine distress, probably from digestive issues combined with overstimulation. Mirabelle could hear the particular strain in David's voice that indicated trapped gas, the type of discomfort that could only be relieved with specific pressure point techniques and positioning. Mirabelle closed her eyes and could picture exactly what needed to be done. She had learned these techniques through necessity, caring for the babies and toddlers in the various places she had called home over the years. When you're living in shelters with multiple families crowded together, everyone becomes responsible for everyone else's children. She had gotten particularly good at it after spending 6 months at a transitional housing facility where Mrs. Rodriguez, an elderly former nurse, had taught her infant massage and colic relief techniques. "Mija," Mrs. Rodriguez had said, watching Mirabel naturally calm a screaming infant while other residents looked on helplessly. "You have healing hands. Don't ever forget that gift." Mirabel's current seat in economy class was a luxury she had barely been able to afford. The International Social Work Conference in London was her first major opportunity to present her research on community-based support systems for vulnerable families. She had been selected to speak based on her academic work and her extensive hands-on experience. The nonprofit organization Community Bridges had sponsored her trip, raising funds through bake sales, small donations, and a GoFundMe campaign that had barely covered her expenses. Mirabel was currently between housing situations, staying with friends and in temporary accommodations while she finished her degree and built toward stability. But none of that mattered right now. What mattered was that there was a child in distress, and Mirabel knew she could help. She had been listening to David's cries for hours now, and she recognized exactly what type of intervention he needed. The question was whether she would have the courage to offer help to a wealthy businessman who might see her as an unwelcome intrusion. Mirabel looked down at her clothes, clean but clearly second-hand jeans, a simple t-shirt she had gotten from a community clothing drive, and sneakers that she had carefully repaired with shoe glue when the sole had started separating. She was acutely aware that everything about her appearance would signal to first-class passengers that she didn't belong in their space. But David's cries were getting more desperate, and Mirabel's compassion was stronger than her fear of rejection. She stood up from her economy seat, ignoring the curious stares from nearby passengers who wondered why a young black woman was walking toward first class. Her heart was beating fast, but her steps were steady and determined. The flight attendant stationed at the divider between economy and first class looked at Mirabel with polite but clear suspicion. "Can I help you with something, miss?" the attendant asked, positioning herself to redirect Mirabel back to economy if necessary. "The baby in first class," Mirabel said quietly, her voice respectful but confident. "I believe I might be able to help calm him down." The flight attendant's eyebrows rose skeptically. "Are you traveling with family in first class?" "No, ma'am," Mirabel replied honestly. "But I have significant experience with colicky babies, and I recognize the specific type of distress crying that child is experiencing. There are techniques that can provide relief." The flight attendant glanced toward first class, where David's screams were reaching new levels of intensity, then back at Mirabel's earnest face. "Let me speak with the father," she said diplomatically. But before the attendant could move, Michael Hayes appeared in the aisle himself, holding the screaming David and looking completely overwhelmed. His expensive shirt was wrinkled and stained, his hair was disheveled, and his eyes held the desperate look of a man at the end of his rope. "I heard someone say they might be able to help," Michael said, his voice barely audible above David's wails. His usual executive composure had completely cracked under hours of his son's distress. Mirabel took a deep breath, knowing this moment would determine whether she would be accepted as a helper or dismissed as an inappropriate intruder. "Sir, my name is Mirabel Johnson," she said clearly, looking Michael directly in the eyes. "I know this might seem unusual, but I have extensive experience with babies who have severe colic and digestive distress. I believe your son is experiencing trapped gas and overstimulation, and I know techniques that could provide him relief." Michael stared at Mirabel, really seeing her for the first time. Despite her modest appearance, there was something in her eyes that commanded respect, a quiet confidence, genuine concern for David's well-being, and a maturity that seemed beyond her years. Michael was exhausted enough and desperate enough to consider help from any source, but something about Mirabel's professional manner and the specific way she had diagnosed David's problem made him pause. "What kind of techniques?" Michael asked, raising his voice to be heard over David's crying. "Gentle pressure point massage along his spine combined with a specific holding position that helps release gas and digestive pressure," Mirabel explained professionally. "Also, babies experiencing this type of distress often need calm, steady contact rather than bouncing or excessive movement." Michael looked around the first-class cabin and realized that every passenger was watching this interaction with intense interest. Some looked skeptical about accepting help from a young woman from economy class, while others appeared hopeful that anyone might finally bring peace to the flight. Harold Morrison leaned forward in his seat. For God's sake, if she thinks she can help, let her try. This has been going on for hours. Victoria Sterling nodded emphatically. Anything is worth attempting at this point. Michael made a decision that would change everything. Please, he said, extending David toward Mirabelle. If you think you can help him, I'm willing to try anything. What happened next seemed to defy logic and medical understanding. The moment Mirabelle's experienced hands made contact with David, his crying began to diminish. Mirabelle held him in a position Michael had never seen before, supporting his head and neck with one hand while applying gentle, rhythmic pressure along his spine with the other. Babies with colic and digestive issues often have trapped gas that creates genuine pain, Mirabelle explained quietly as she worked, her voice somehow carrying over David's decreasing whimpers. This position helps release the pressure while the back massage stimulates their digestive system and provides comfort. David's screaming reduced to soft hiccups, then to quiet coos, then to complete, blessed silence. The entire first-class cabin seemed to hold its breath, as if afraid that any sudden movement might break the spell Mirabelle had cast. Even the flight attendants gathered nearby, amazed by the sudden transformation in the cabin's atmosphere. Mirabelle began humming a soft, melodic tune that seemed to hypnotize David. His eyes, which had been squeezed shut in distress for hours, slowly opened and focused on Mirabelle's face with what looked like recognition and gratitude. "Where did you learn that song?" Michael whispered, mesmerized by the complete change in his son. "An elderly woman at a shelter taught it to me," Mirabelle replied, continuing the gentle massage. "She said her grandmother sang it to calm babies during the Depression. Sometimes old wisdom carries the most powerful healing." Michael watched in amazement as David's tiny body completely relaxed in Mirabelle's arms. His clenched fists slowly uncurled. His breathing became deep and regular, and for the first time in hours, his face looked peaceful rather than anguished. The businessman in seat 2A, who had been complaining loudly about the disruption, now watched Mirabelle with obvious admiration. "Remarkable," Harold Morrison said to his wife. "Absolutely remarkable. I've never seen anything like it." Victoria Sterling had put down her phone and was staring at Mirabelle with a mixture of surprise and respect. "That was incredible," she whispered to her assistant. "How did she know exactly what to do?" The flight attendants were equally impressed. Sarah approached Mirabelle with newfound respect. "Miss Johnson, that was extraordinary. Are you studying pediatric care?" Mirabelle smiled softly, still holding David, who was now gazing up at her with sleepy, content eyes. "Social work with a focus on family support systems. But I've had a lot of practical experience with children in various challenging situations." As David's eyes began to flutter closed, preparing for what looked like peaceful sleep, Mirabelle gently transferred him back to Michael's arms, carefully maintaining the same supportive positioning. "He should sleep comfortably for the rest of the flight now," Mirabelle said confidently. "The pressure on his digestive system has been relieved, and he's no longer overstimulated." Michael found himself studying Mirabelle with entirely new eyes as he held his now peaceful son. This young woman had accomplished in minutes what he had been unable to achieve in hours. But more than that, she had done it with such grace, skill, and genuine caring that it was clear this wasn't just luck or coincidence. "Mirabelle," he said quietly, not wanting to wake David. "That was absolutely incredible. How did you know exactly what David needed when I—" His own father couldn't figure it out. Mirabelle's expression grew thoughtful. "Sometimes experience teaches us things that can't be learned any other way. I've cared for a lot of babies who were experiencing distress, and you learn to read the different types of cries and what they mean. Where did you gain all this experience?" Michael asked, genuinely curious about the background of this remarkable young woman who had just performed what felt like a miracle. "Various places," Mirabelle said carefully, not wanting to make Michael uncomfortable with the details of her unconventional upbringing. "I volunteered at community centers, helped families in transitional housing, and worked with children in challenging situations." You learn quickly when babies are depending on you to understand their needs. Michael sensed there was much more to Mirabelle's story, and he found himself wanting to know everything about her. This wasn't just about gratitude for helping David. There was something about Mirabelle herself, her confidence, her competence, her obvious intelligence and compassion, that intrigued him completely. If you've ever been surprised by someone's hidden talents or unexpected expertise, you know how Michael was feeling right now. Sometimes the most powerful help comes from the most unlikely sources. If this story is already changing how you see the people around you, smash that like button to let me know. And if you want to see how this incredible encounter transforms both their lives, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on because you won't want to miss what happens next. David slept peacefully in Michael's arms as Mirabelle prepared to return to her economy seat. But Michael found himself reluctant to let her leave. What had just happened felt like more than just a solution to his immediate problem. It felt like a glimpse into a world of knowledge and capability he hadn't known existed. "Mirabelle," he said as she started to move back toward economy, "would you mind staying in first class for the rest of the flight? There's an empty seat right here, and I'd really like to know more about you." Mirabelle hesitated, acutely aware of the class and economic boundaries she would be crossing by accepting his invitation. But something in Michael's eyes, genuine respect and interest rather than condescension or pity, made her decision for her. "If you're sure it's not an imposition," she said carefully, "after what you just did for David and me, you could have any seat on this plane," Michael replied with complete sincerity. As Mirabelle settled into the plush leather seat beside them, both she and Michael realized that this chance encounter was about to become something much more significant than either of them had anticipated. As the luxurious first-class cabin settled into peaceful quiet with David sleeping soundly, Michael found himself studying Mirabelle with growing fascination. Everything about her contradicted his assumptions about expertise, intelligence, and capability. "Tell me about yourself, Mirabelle," Michael said, keeping his voice low to avoid waking David. "I want to understand how you developed such incredible skills with children." Mirabelle shifted slightly in her seat, still somewhat overwhelmed by the opulence surrounding her. The leather was softer than any furniture she had ever sat on, and the personal space alone was larger than some of the rooms she had called home. "It's not really that incredible," Mirabelle said modestly. "When you're around children who are struggling, you learn to pay attention to what they need. You have to." "What do you mean by children who are struggling?" Michael asked gently, sensing there was a deeper story. Mirabelle looked out the airplane window at the clouds below, gathering her thoughts. She wasn't used to sharing her background with people like Michael, but something about his genuine interest and the extraordinary circumstances of their meeting made her feel safe to be honest. "I grew up in the foster care system," Mirabelle said quietly. 15 different homes between the ages of 5 and 18. Some were good, some were challenging. But in almost every placement, there were other children, babies, toddlers, kids dealing with trauma and transition. Michael felt his heart clench as he began to understand the experiences that had shaped Mirabelle's expertise. In group homes and shelters, everyone becomes responsible for everyone else's children, Mirabelle continued. When you have 4 babies crying at once and only one overwhelmed caregiver, you learn fast how to help. You figure out which cry means hunger, which means pain, which means fear. "That must have been incredibly difficult," Michael said, his respect for Mirabelle deepening even further. Mirabelle shrugged with the resilience of someone who had learned to find strength in adversity. "It taught me things they don't cover in textbooks. How to read nonverbal communication, how to provide comfort when resources are limited, how to see potential solutions when everyone else sees only problems." "Is that what led you to social work?" Michael asked. Mirabelle's eyes lit up with passion. "I want to change the system that failed so many kids I grew up with. Too many children age out of foster care with no support, no connections, no opportunities. They end up homeless, struggling with addiction, or worse." She leaned forward slightly, her voice growing more animated. "But I've also seen incredible resilience and potential in these kids. They just need someone to believe in them and provide the right kind of support." Michael was struck by Mirabelle's vision and determination. "What's your plan?" I'm presenting research at the International Social Work Conference in London, Mirabelle said, a note of pride creeping into her voice. It's about community-based support systems that could revolutionize how we help vulnerable families. That's incredible, Michael said, and he meant it. How did you get selected for such a prestigious conference? Mirabelle smiled, remembering the moment she had received the acceptance email. I developed a model for using technology to connect families in crisis with community resources and peer support networks. Instead of just providing services to people, we help them build sustainable support systems. Michael's business mind immediately recognized the innovation in Mirabelle's approach. That's brilliant. You're creating networks instead of dependencies. Exactly, Mirabelle said, excited that he understood her vision so quickly. Most social work focuses on crisis intervention. But what if we could prevent the crises by building stronger communities? As Mirabelle continued explaining her research, Michael found himself more impressed with each detail. This wasn't just academic theory. Mirabelle was proposing practical solutions based on lived experience and careful analysis. The challenge, Mirabelle continued, is that most funding goes to traditional programs that treat symptoms rather than causes. My model requires initial technology investment that most nonprofits can't afford. What kind of technology investment? Michael asked, his mind already working on possibilities. Database systems for resource mapping, communication platforms for peer support networks, mobile apps that connect families with immediate help, Mirabelle explained. Nothing groundbreaking individually, but integrated in a way that creates comprehensive support ecosystems. Michael realized he was witnessing something remarkable, not just intelligence, but visionary thinking that could genuinely change lives. Mirabelle wasn't just someone who could calm crying babies. She was a social innovator with solutions to problems his own company claimed to care about addressing. The flight attendant approached with refreshments, and Michael noticed how respectfully she now treated Mirabelle, having witnessed her earlier intervention with David. "Would you care for anything, Miss Johnson?" Sarah asked with genuine warmth. "Just water, please," Mirabelle replied graciously. As they sipped their drinks, David stirring slightly but remaining peaceful in Michael's arms, the conversation turned to Michael's own background. "What about you?" Mirabelle asked. "How does someone build a $12 billion company by 34? Michael launched into his story, but found himself sharing more personal details than he typically revealed in interviews. How his company had started in his college dorm room with a vision of using artificial intelligence to solve real-world problems. How success had brought him everything he thought he wanted but had somehow left him feeling disconnected from his original purpose. "I got so focused on growth and profits that I lost sight of why I started the company in the first place," Michael admitted. "I wanted to use technology to help people, but somewhere along the way it became just about beating competitors and increasing market share." "What changed?" Mirabelle asked. Michael looked down at David, sleeping peacefully after hours of distress. "Becoming a father, I suppose, and meeting people like you who remind me what really matters." "People like me?" Mirabelle asked, curious about his meaning. "People who are actually solving problems instead of just talking about them," Michael said. "You've taken your experiences and turned them into something that can help others. That's what I thought I was doing, but I got lost in the business side of things." Mirabelle studied Michael's face, seeing genuine reflection and perhaps regret. "It's never too late to refocus on your original purpose." "Maybe not," Michael said thoughtfully. "Actually, Mirabelle, I have a proposition for you." Mirabelle raised an eyebrow, curious but cautious. "I have 5 days of meetings in London, and as you can see, I'm completely unprepared to manage David while conducting international business negotiations," Michael said. "Would you consider helping me care for him during my trip? I'll pay you $500 per day, provide you with luxury accommodations, and ensure you have complete flexibility to attend your conference." Mirabelle stared at Michael in shock. $500 per day? "Mr. Hayes, that's more than I usually earn in 2 weeks. It's what a professional nanny would cost in London," Michael replied. "And frankly, you've already proven you're more skilled with David than any professional I could hire." Mirabelle's mind raced as she considered the implications. The money would be transformative for her immediate circumstances. She could afford proper housing, professional clothes for her conference presentation, and have a financial cushion for the first time in her adult life. But she was also concerned about maintaining her independence and dignity. Mr. Hayes, I appreciate the offer, but I need to be clear about something. This conference is the most important opportunity of my career. I can't let anything interfere with my preparation or presentation. I understand completely, Michael said. The conference comes first. I would only need your help during specific business meetings and in the evenings. You'd have complete freedom during the day to focus on your presentation. Michael leaned forward, his expression becoming more serious. Mirabelle, in the past 4 hours, you've shown me something I rarely encounter in my business world. Someone who can solve problems that others can't, who remains calm under pressure, and who acts with genuine compassion rather than self-interest. What do you mean? Mirabelle asked. You could have stayed in your economy seat and ignored a crying baby that wasn't your responsibility, Michael explained. Instead, you risked rejection and potential embarrassment to help a stranger. That kind of character is rarer than technical skills or academic credentials. Mirabelle felt a warmth spreading through her chest at Michael's words. She had spent so many years being seen as a problem to be managed rather than a person with valuable contributions to make. Can I have some time to think about it? Mirabelle asked. Of course, Michael replied. But I should mention one more thing. What's that? Michael's expression grew even more thoughtful. My company has a foundation that invests in social innovations with potential for large-scale impact. After hearing about your research, I'd like to discuss how we might support your work, regardless of your decision about helping with David. Mirabelle felt her heart racing as she realized the magnitude of what Michael was suggesting. You're talking about funding my community support model? I'm talking about potentially revolutionizing how technology companies approach social responsibility, Michael said. What you've described isn't just social work. It's exactly the kind of systemic solution that could change millions of lives if properly implemented and scaled. Mirabelle sat in stunned silence, processing the possibility that this chance encounter might open doors she had never imagined possible. Mr. Hayes, she said finally, I accept your offer to help with David, and I would be honored to discuss how my research might align with your foundation's goals. Michael smiled, feeling a sense of excitement and purpose he hadn't experienced in years. Excellent. And Mirabelle, please call me Michael. Pause the video for a second if you can relate to this moment, when an unexpected opportunity appears that could change everything about your future. Mirabelle's courage to help a stranger is about to transform her entire life trajectory. If you believe that taking risks to help others always comes back to bless you, hit that like button right now. And if you're invested in seeing how this partnership changes both their worlds, make sure you're subscribed because the best part of this story is still coming. The remainder of the flight passed quickly as Michael and Mirabelle discussed the details of their arrangement. David slept peacefully, occasionally stirring to look up at Mirabelle with what seemed like recognition and contentment. When they landed at London Heathrow Airport, Mirabelle experienced culture shock that went beyond just the luxury of Michael's waiting transportation. The black Mercedes with uniformed driver was unlike anything she had ever imagined riding in, let alone being treated as an honored passenger. The Langham Hotel, Michael told the driver as Mirabelle settled into leather seats that were more comfortable than most furniture she had ever owned. As they drove through London's busy streets, Mirabelle watched the city unfold outside her window with wonder and anticipation. Everything felt surreal 12 hours ago. She had been worried about affording meals during her London stay. Now she was riding in luxury transportation as the guest of one of America's most successful businessmen. Mirabelle, Michael said as they approached their hotel, I want you to know that what happened on that airplane changed my perspective in ways I'm still processing. You didn't just help David. You reminded me what real problem-solving looks like. Mirabelle looked at Michael thoughtfully. Sometimes the best solutions come from people who have actually lived through the problems. When they arrived at the 5-star Langham Hotel, Mirabelle felt like she had entered a different universe entirely. The lobby was more elegant than any building she had ever been inside, with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and furniture that probably cost more than she had ever spent on anything in her life. "Mr. Hayes, welcome back," the hotel manager said warmly, approaching them with professional enthusiasm. "Your usual suite is ready, and we've prepared the adjoining room as requested." As they rode the elevator to the top floor, Mirabelle tried to process the reality of her situation. She was about to stay in accommodations that represented luxury beyond anything she had ever experienced, all because she had decided to help a crying baby on an airplane. Michael's suite was larger than some apartments Mirabelle had lived in, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering spectacular views of London, a full kitchen, multiple seating areas, and space that seemed designed for someone accustomed to having the world at their fingertips. "Your room is through that door," Michael said, gesturing toward an adjoining suite. "You'll have complete privacy, your own bathroom with all amenities, and 24-hour room service if you need anything." Mirabelle opened the door to her room and felt overwhelmed by its elegance and size. The bed was larger than any she had ever seen. The bathroom featured marble surfaces and gold fixtures, and the window offered a stunning view of Hyde Park. "Michael," Mirabelle said, returning to the main suite where he was preparing a bottle for David, "I have to ask, why are you being so generous? You barely know me." Michael paused in his bottle preparation, considering his answer carefully. "Mirabelle, in my business career, I've learned to recognize exceptional people quickly. What you did on that airplane wasn't just about childcare skills. It demonstrated problem-solving abilities, emotional intelligence, and the courage to act when others wouldn't." He resumed preparing David's bottle, testing its temperature on his wrist. "But more than that, you remind me of myself at your age. I also came from circumstances where opportunities were scarce, and I had to work harder than others just to get noticed." Mirabelle felt surprised by this revelation. "You didn't grow up wealthy?" Michael smiled as David eagerly accepted his bottle. "My father worked construction, and my mother cleaned office buildings at night to make ends meet. I earned a scholarship to study computer science at MIT, and I built my company from absolutely nothing." This information completely changed Mirabelle's perception of Michael. She had assumed all billionaires inherited their wealth or had family connections that opened doors. "The difference," Michael continued, "is that I had mentors along the way who believed in my potential and opened doors I couldn't have opened myself. I want to be that kind of mentor for you." Mirabelle felt emotion rising in her chest as she absorbed the significance of what Michael was offering. "You're talking about more than just this week in London." "Much more," Michael confirmed. "I'm talking about supporting your education, funding your research, and eventually creating a platform for you to implement your ideas at a scale that could impact millions of lives." The next morning, Mirabelle woke up in luxury accommodations that still felt like a dream. Michael had already arranged for breakfast to be delivered to both their rooms, along with a schedule that balanced his business meetings with David's care needs and Mirabelle's conference requirements. "I have meetings from 10 until 4 today," Michael explained as they shared breakfast while David played with colorful toys on a blanket. "David typically naps from 1 to 3, which will give you 2 hours of complete freedom to focus on your conference preparation." Mirabelle appreciated Michael's thoughtfulness about her priorities, but she was also discovering that caring for David felt natural rather than burdensome. His earlier distress seemed to have been resolved by the intervention on the airplane, and he was now a curious, engaged child who responded positively to her attention. The International Social Work Conference was being held at the prestigious Royal Institution in London, a historic building where some of the world's greatest scientific and social innovations had been announced over the centuries. Mirabelle walked into the main auditorium and felt her heart racing with excitement and nervousness. Hundreds of social work professionals, academics, and policymakers from around the world filled the elegant space, representing the cutting edge of thinking about social challenges and solutions. "Welcome to the 42nd Annual International Social Work Conference," announced Dr. Margaret Thompson, the conference director. "You represent the future of social innovation and community development. Over the next 3 days, you'll encounter ideas and approaches that could transform how we address the most pressing challenges facing vulnerable populations worldwide." Mirabelle looked around the auditorium and felt both intimidated and exhilarated. Some attendees clearly represented well-funded universities and established organizations, while others, like herself, appeared to be emerging voices bringing fresh perspectives to persistent problems. But Mirabelle had learned something important during her airplane encounter with Michael. Success wasn't determined by background or resources. It was determined by the ability to solve problems that others couldn't solve, and by the courage to offer solutions even when they seemed unlikely to be accepted. Her presentation was scheduled for the second day of the conference, giving her time to attend other sessions and network with fellow attendees. But Mirabelle spent most of her first day focused on final preparations, refining her slides and practicing her delivery in her hotel room while David napped peacefully. That evening, as Mirabelle helped Michael with David's bedtime routine, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just 24 hours. "Michael," she said as they watched David drift off to sleep in his travel crib, "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and discover this is all a dream." "Why?" Michael asked, settling into a comfortable chair across from where Mirabelle was organizing her conference materials. "Because things like this don't happen to people like me," Mirabelle said honestly. "I've spent my whole life being told that success requires connections and resources I don't have. Yet here I am, about to present at an international conference while staying in a luxury hotel as the guest of a billionaire CEO." Michael studied Mirabelle's face, seeing vulnerability beneath her usual confidence. "Mirabelle, things like this happen to people exactly like you, people who combine exceptional ability with genuine commitment to helping others. The only difference is that most people don't get the chance to demonstrate what they're capable of." "What do you mean?" "Talent and vision exist everywhere," Michael said, "but opportunities to showcase them are often limited by systemic barriers. What happened between us on that airplane was you getting the chance to show your capabilities in a situation where they were desperately needed." Mirabelle nodded, understanding his point. "And now I have the platform to share my ideas with people who might actually be able to implement them." "Exactly," Michael said. "Tomorrow you're going to present research that could change how the social work field approaches community development. And regardless of how the audience responds, you'll have proven to yourself that you belong in these conversations." As Mirabelle prepared for sleep in her elegant hotel room, she felt a sense of anticipation unlike anything she had ever experienced. Tomorrow would determine whether her ideas could resonate with established professionals and whether her vision for community-based support systems could gain the recognition necessary for implementation. But more than that, tomorrow would prove whether a young woman who had aged out of foster care could command respect and attention in rooms filled with people who had never questioned their right to be there. The girl who had learned to calm crying babies in homeless shelters was about to discover whether those same skills, reading needs, providing comfort, and creating solutions from limited resources, could translate into changing the world. Mirabelle's about to step into the biggest moment of her life, presenting her revolutionary ideas to some of the most influential people in social work. If you've ever had to prove yourself in a room where you felt like you didn't belong, you know exactly what she's feeling right now. Drop a comment below about a time when you surprised people with your capabilities. And if you want to see Mirabelle's presentation blow everyone away, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you won't want to miss how this story ends. The next morning arrived with Mirabelle feeling a mixture of excitement and nervous energy that reminded her of every important moment in her life when she had to prove herself despite others' low expectations. She dressed carefully in the one professional outfit she owned, a simple black dress that she had purchased secondhand but had tailored to fit perfectly. Mirabelle had learned long ago that when opportunities arise, you make the most of them with whatever resources you have available. David was unusually calm and happy during breakfast, as if he sensed the importance of the day and wanted to contribute to Mirabelle's success by being the perfect child. "You're going to be incredible today," Michael said as Mirabelle gathered her presentation materials. "I've heard your ideas, and I know how passionate you are about this work. Trust that passion and let it carry you." "Thank you," Mirabelle said, feeling grateful for his confidence in her abilities. "Will you be able to attend my presentation?" Michael smiled. "I wouldn't miss it for anything. My morning meetings end at 11, and your presentation starts at noon. I'll be in the front row." The Royal Institution's lecture hall was packed when Mirabelle arrived. 300 social work professionals, academics, policymakers, and community leaders filled every seat, representing decades of experience and billions of dollars in funding decisions. Mirabelle looked out at the audience and felt her heart pounding, but also felt the same calm determination that had allowed her to approach Michael on the airplane when David needed help. She had something valuable to offer, and these people needed to hear it. Dr. Thompson introduced her with enthusiasm. Our next presenter is Mirabelle Johnson, representing Community Bridges in Detroit. Ms. Johnson will be sharing research on innovative community-based support systems that could revolutionize how we approach family stability and crisis prevention. Mirabelle stepped to the podium and looked out at the audience, making eye contact with Michael in the front row, who gave her an encouraging nod. 3 years ago, Mirabelle began, her voice clear and confident. I was aging out of foster care with no family, no connections, and no resources. According to every statistical prediction, I should have ended up homeless, struggling with addiction, or worse. The audience was immediately attentive, recognizing that Mirabelle was offering a perspective they rarely heard in academic conferences. But something different happened to me, Mirabelle continued. I encountered a community that saw potential instead of problems, that offered support instead of judgment, and that created connections instead of dependencies. And that experience taught me that our entire approach to social work might be fundamentally backwards. For the next 20 minutes, Mirabelle presented research that combined rigorous academic analysis with insights that could only come from lived experience. She outlined how traditional social work focuses on crisis intervention rather than crisis prevention, on individual services rather than community building, and on professional expertise rather than peer support. What if, Mirabelle asked the audience, instead of waiting for families to reach crisis points, we helped them build support systems that prevented crises from occurring? What if we used technology not to replace human connection, but to facilitate it? Mirabelle's presentation included detailed implementation plans, cost-benefit analyses, and pilot program results that demonstrated the effectiveness of her community-based approach. But what made the greatest impact was her ability to explain complex social theory through real-world examples that everyone could understand. When a single mother is struggling to find childcare so she can work, our current system might eventually provide her with emergency assistance, Mirabelle explained. But my model would connect her with other parents in similar situations, helping them create mutual support networks that solve multiple problems simultaneously. When Mirabelle finished her presentation, the applause was immediate and sustained. But more importantly, she could see in the audience's faces that she had genuinely changed how people were thinking about social work practice. Dr. Thompson returned to the podium with obvious excitement. Ms. Johnson, that was extraordinary. Your integration of lived experience with academic research offers insights that could transform our entire field. Are you planning to pursue graduate studies to continue developing these ideas? That's been challenging to arrange due to financial constraints, Mirabelle replied honestly. But I'm committed to finding ways to continue this work regardless of the obstacles. After her presentation, Mirabelle was surrounded by conference attendees wanting to learn more about her research. University professors offered her graduate program opportunities, nonprofit directors discussed implementation possibilities, and policymakers inquired about scaling her model nationally. But the conversation that mattered most to Mirabelle came from Dr. Sarah Chun, Director of Social Innovation at Cambridge University. Mirabelle, Dr. Chun said, your presentation has generated more excitement than anything we've heard at this conference in years. Would you be interested in pursuing a PhD with full funding to continue developing this research? Mirabelle felt her world shifting as she realized that the opportunities Michael had hinted at were becoming concrete realities. I would be honored to discuss that possibility, Mirabelle replied, trying to maintain her composure while internally celebrating. When the formal conference session ended, Michael approached Mirabelle with David in his arms and a smile that showed his pride in her accomplishment. Mirabelle, he said, that was absolutely brilliant. You didn't just present research. You offered a vision that could change how society approaches some of our most persistent challenges. Thank you, Mirabelle said, still processing everything that had happened. I can't believe how people are responding. I can, Michael said. You offered them something they've been waiting for, Solutions that actually work because they're based on understanding real problems from the inside. That evening in Michael's hotel suite, as David played contentedly with his toys and Mirabelle reviewed the business cards and contact information she had collected, Michael made an announcement that would change everything. "Mirabelle," he said, "I want to make you an official offer." Mirabelle looked up from organizing her materials, curious about what Michael was proposing. "The Hayes Foundation wants to fund your graduate education completely, undergraduate completion if needed, master's degree, PhD, whatever level of study you want to pursue," Michael said. "In exchange, we'd like you to consider eventually joining Hayes Innovation to lead our new social impact division." Mirabelle stared at Michael, hardly able to process the magnitude of what he was offering. "You're talking about creating an entire division around my research?" she asked. "I'm talking about giving you the resources and platform to implement your ideas at a scale that could impact millions of families," Michael replied. "Mirabelle, what you presented today isn't just academic theory. It's a blueprint for using technology and community organizing to solve problems that have persisted for generations." Mirabelle felt tears forming in her eyes as she realized that her childhood dreams of changing the system that had failed her and so many others were becoming achievable realities. "Michael, I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," Michael said with a smile. "Say yes to believing in yourself the way everyone else is starting to believe in you." Mirabelle looked at David, who was reaching toward her with the same trust he had shown when she first calmed him on the airplane. Then back at Michael, whose offer represented opportunities beyond anything she had ever imagined possible. "Yes," she said firmly. "Yes to all of it." As they prepared for their return flight to the United States the next day, both Mirabelle and Michael knew that their chance encounter above the Atlantic Ocean had created something that would extend far beyond their individual lives. Mirabelle had discovered that her experiences and insights could open doors she had never imagined existed. Michael had rediscovered his original purpose and found a partner who could help him use his resources to create meaningful change. But most importantly, David had two adults in his life who understood that the most powerful solutions often come from the most unexpected sources, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the opportunity to show the world what they're truly capable of achieving. The homeless teenager who had done the unthinkable by calming a billionaire's crying baby had discovered that the most unthinkable thing of all was how far a single act of courage and compassion could carry her. The crying had stopped. The presentation was delivered. The future stretched ahead, filled with possibilities that proved that talent, determination, and the willingness to help others can overcome any obstacle and transform any life. Mirabelle's journey from homelessness to international recognition happened because she had the courage to offer help when it was needed most. Her story proves that everyone you meet knows something you don't, and everyone deserves the chance to show their true potential. If this story inspired you to see people differently and believe in the power of unexpected connections, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe to Tales Cleave for more true stories that prove kindness and courage can change the world. And let me know in the comments, what hidden talents do you have that the world needs to see? Until next time, remember that you never know when your moment to help someone might become the moment that transforms your own life forever.